Hello, and I'm going to do the thing. Happy Saturday night, show 52, 53. I don't even know. I lost track. Producer Stanton posted 53. Woo! So I want to talk a little bit about Memorial Day weekend. And this isn't going to be a long show. It's going to be a good, like I always tell comedians, they came for a good show, not for a long show. A lot of comedians just stand on stage and kind of hem and haw and vamp and look for material. That's not me. So first of all, did anyone bring Cheetos? That's funny. So first of all, I want to say that B.J. Thomas died, and that makes me sad because my favorite song when I was a little girl, I did a dance to it at a at an elementary school recital. I can picture it when I close my eyes. It was Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. And it was a theme song from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He had a bunch of other songs too, but that's the one we all remember, like Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. And he died of lung cancer, 78, younger than my mother. Well, not quite. My mom's 78 till tomorrow. It's my mother's birthday eve. It's the eve of my second birthday eve. So let me just take Memorial Day weekend apart for you a little bit, okay? 31 years ago, 31, let that sink in. I was a waitress. I was 27. Do the math. I don't care. I was a waitress in a really cool restaurant on an island community off of Coconut Grove, Florida, called Grove Isle. It's a little community on a private island that you had to go over a bridge and through a guard gate, which, by the way, many years later, my friend Arlene ended up living in a penthouse in Grove Isle with her husband before they bought my dream house in Miami. And I was a waitress. And I remember getting a terrible, terrible set of chills, just like, ooh, you know? And it was a Thursday night. So Wednesday, the 30th, the 30th, which is my mother's birthday, let's just say Wednesday, Tuesday, one night that week, leading into 30 being the 31st. It might have even been Memorial Day weekend itself, because with the 31st being on Thursday, Memorial Day would have been the Monday before. It's always the last Monday in May. And it's always the Indy 500. See how I tie it all together? So I had a terrible, terrible cold, but I don't think of it as a cold. I always tell people that I don't get sick. I get what I call the greevils. And the greevils are a psychological condition that are a combination of grief and the sniffles. I hated being a waitress, and I wasn't good at it. And I had been a waitress at this Grove Isle. I don't even remember when I got the gig, but I was there Mother's Day Sunday, which they told me was the busiest day of the year. We had 3 seatings for brunch. I worked 14 hours. So it was 3, you had to get there early, set up the tables, 3 seatings for brunch, and then regular, afternoon and dinner. So by the time that we completed our day, it turns out that no matter how good you were or how bad they were, they pooled your tips. And I remember Mother's Day of 1990, I worked for 14 hours, and I think I made, I'm sure it's in one of my journals, about $210, maybe $220. Whatever it was, it averaged out to some ridiculously low amount per hour. And I had worked so incredibly hard. And I remember thinking, you're smarter than this. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong in honest work or hard work or being a waiter or waitress. I just knew that I was floundering, that I hadn't found my thing, that there was something very challenging to me. And I had been floundering at that point in my life, really floundering. So I got ill. I got, a couple weeks later, I got sick, very sick. I had a fever. I drove home. It was like a flu, like I was chilled and feverish, and I barely, like when I told the kitchen, I got to go, I went home. I was bad. So I went home, And I was in bed. And the next morning, I looked at the Miami Herald, and there was a picture of Sam Kinison. And rest in peace. He's been dead a long time. Some of you don't even know who he is, but he was a crazy, loud comedian who yelled a lot. And he had one song on MTV, which was a remake of Wild Thing, which had Jessica Hahn, who was the woman who sued. Uh, I'm trying to remember the name of the preacher, but he was married to this woman who cried a lot. Jim and Tammy Baker. I can't believe all this is coming back to me, but you know how my memory works. And so he was the PTL. I'm tying it all together, man. This was the early days, long before Me Too. There was Jessica Hahn, who received payoffs from this Christian organization, PTL, praise the Lord, because she had been Me Too'd by their lead guy, Jim Baker, who I thought was a little light in the loafers, if you want to be honest. But I digress. Jessica Hahn was in the video for Wild Thing, which was Sam Kinison, and he was a wild thing. And I saw a picture of Sam Kinison coming out of the Miami arena, a basketball arena, with two big blondes on his arms. And I thought, if that fat, ugly bastard is getting rich and laid, I'm going to try this comedy thing. So right from my sickbed on a Thursday, and believe me, my whole life people have said, you should be a comedian. And I'm like, I'm not even funny, because I don't write jokes. I just tell the truth. Like, I'll say something in conversation and my friends will be like, that's hilarious. Is that in your act? I'm like, no, I just said it to you right now. It happens all the time, like all the time. So I thought, I'm going to try this comedy thing, because my friends kept saying, you should be a comedian. You should do stand-up. And I was like, that's a stupid job. Like, it wasn't like I was enamored of it or I wanted to do it my whole life or I thought it was amazing. But I did love comedy. I did love comedy movies. I mean, I understand going back to Me Too. I get the whole thing with Woody Allen, whatever. But that's, anybody who says his early movies weren't funny, I'm sorry. It's like saying Michael Jackson's music isn't good. Yes, he did what he did, but he's, music was good. So, I liked comedy. I appreciated comedy, but it never occurred to me to be a comedian myself until I was laying in bed with the Greevils and I saw Sam Kinison coming out of the arena. People have asked me, like, what made you become a comedian? It was like a lightning bolt. I'm telling you, this is the exact thought I have. If that fat, ugly bastard is getting rich and laid, I'm going to try comedy. I was broke. I was divorced. I was heartbroken. I was waiting tables. I had gone against my dad's best advice, which I will now give you. My father once said, Monique, one day you're going to be broke. One day you're going to be heartbroken. Make sure it's not the same day. So at that point, I wasn't even listening to my dad. So May 31st, 1990 was a Thursday. And I called from my fever bed. I called the comedy club in Miami that had an open mic scene called Coconuts. I worked with Bill Hicks twice, by the way, Albert Contreras, 2 times. The first time I was ever on stage in LA, I had to follow Bill Hicks at Igby's on Pico. And I did fine. So yes, I worked with Bill Hicks 2 times. So that being said, I love your joke, shaking hands with the unemployed. Thank you. I'm not going to lie to you. I think it's pretty funny too. It's true. So I showed up at the comedy club. I called the guy. I said, how do you do stand up? Like, that's how green I was. I hadn't even hung out in clubs. And he said, well, you show up with 3 minutes of clean original material and you sign up on the board. Well, I said, I don't know how clean it'll be, but it'll be mighty original. And that was that. I showed up that night. I went up. I did my 3 minutes. I'll never forget the opening act. The MC was a guy named Special K. McRae. The middle was a guy named Mike Chiselka. And the headliner was a guy named Alan Prophet. And Special K. McRae was in a movie years later about a drug dealer. And he was actually very, very good. The movie was called Rush. And it had one of the Allman brothers played a drug dealer. I think it was Dwayne Allman, the one that was married to Cher. But again, I digress all over the place. And his tagline was, I ain't telling you what I heard. I'm telling you what I know. That was his thing he would say. He was very funny, Special K McCrae. So anyway, I went up. I did very well. The owner said, "How long have you been open micing?" I said, "I'm the girl on the phone." He said, "You're a natural. Come back next week." And that's that. So May 31st, this Monday, will be 31 years. I was going to do something fun for my 30th anniversary of being a comedian, but you know how that goes with the Rona. But 31 on the 31st is almost better. And one of my very dear, I'm going to say friends, because fan doesn't cut it, Hector Baez already sent me a lovely bouquet commemorating my second birthday. Like Christians say they were born again. I consider May 31st my second birthday because I feel like I was born into my purpose. And comedy has taken me many, many places. So ever since then, May 31st, or Memorial Day weekend, if you will, around this time of year, is always a time of reflection, more so than my real birthday. And it's also a time of reflection because May 30th is my mother's birthday. And I grew up in a little town within a town in Miami. There was a little city, a municipality called West Miami. And in West Miami, on Memorial Day, in the park, because there was a park behind the Winn-Dixie, which is a very inappropriate name for a grocery store, but it was Winn, Winn hyphen Dixie. I'm sure they're probably hiding some Southern agenda or something. Who cares? But yes, there used to be a chain of grocery stores in Miami called Winn-Dixie Quick Checks. And behind the Winn-Dixie, there was a park, a small park. West Miami had a little park. And on Memorial Day, which usually coincided with my mother's birthday weekend, we would go to this small parade, and then they would have all of the vets lined up, the veterans, and they had all of these easels, and they would commemorate these older gentlemen, and they would put wreaths on the easels commemorating, you know, who in the neighborhood was lost that year, who had served, who had passed. And because this was the 70s, I mean, we had World War at that point. I think we might have even had one World War I survivor and many World War II and Korea. But I believe Memorial Day is really more about the world wars versus, you know, Vietnam or Korea. That's my understanding. I could be wrong. I haven't Wikipedia'd Memorial Day in quite some time, since my KFI days. So this is always a super special weekend and fun time for me of really understanding that people made sacrifices for us. And when I think about, and I've done USO tours, by the way, many, many, many. At one time, I was the most requested act of the DoD, Department of Defense. I was in Korea many times, probably a dozen times, many, many bases in Korea. I've actually had people call me. My nephew, like my uncle's child, technically my cousin, but he's much younger than me. He told a group of guys in Kunsan base in Korea, "Oh my goodness, that's my cousin." And they were like, "No way." And he's like, "I'll call her right now." And, you know, and actually he that was before cell phones could do FaceTiming, but he took a picture of my picture on the wall in the officers club in Kunsan, Korea. But I've been all over Korea, all over Japan. I've been all over Eastern Europe. I did the Balkans. I was in a NATO base. I've been to Sarajevo. I did a whole tour of that part of the world. And I went to Iraq during wartime. I entertained in Mosul. I actually flew into Kuwait on a commercial jet, and then I got picked up in a C-130 and flown in, as they say, in country to perform in Iraq. Like, I went into some of the palaces that had been converted and now are being used as bases. It was pretty interesting. They showed me this sand pit where Saddam had buried these planes that looked like stingrays just under the sand, and they could find them with, you know, like ultrasonic x-rays. They found these planes. But again, I'm digressing a lot today because I'm excited and I'm happy. And I see that we had this global event in COVID, which I was just talking to producer Stanton before the show started, whatever the cause, whatever the information that was promulgated, whatever happened, however it happened, is irrelevant. Producer Stanton and I went a year ago, Thursday, we went down to Disneyland and we went to Universal Studios and we took footage and photographs and B-roll and little stand-ups in front of different parts of the gates of things that were locked. And I was thinking of doing a little documentary, which I may still do, I wouldn't call it this because it turned out to be much longer than a summer. Oh, there, you've got some. Producer Stanton's got a picture of me. But we've got footage. So we were calling it, we were tentatively calling it the Summer of Slam. And we have all kinds of content. We had a lot of fun out there. And there was nothing. There were no birds, no people, no nothing, just locked gates. And in fact, we got chased away. It was pretty funny. We went to Universal Studios and a security guard chased us away from the front gates. He's like, "What are you doing?" And then we just went around and took pictures of completely ghost town Beverly Hills. And we took pictures of, and hopefully maybe we'll do some stuff with this stuff, which, if nothing else, just to remember. And so that was Memorial Day last week, because I felt it was the kickoff of what I was referring to as the Summer of Slam. And we went to Universal and we walked around Burbank. We went to Magnolia. We took pictures of businesses that were gone, that weren't coming back, like this little health food store, Fountain of Life, that had been there forever. And here we are again. When I think about the sacrifice that people made, and people made huge sacrifices for us. When I think about the sacrifices people made so that we could be here in this country. And again, when I say that, I talked about this on the 330. In Western culture, it was a global phenomenon, the world wars. And I'm sure that Britain has their version of Memorial Day, and New Zealand and Australia and Canada have their versions of Veterans Day and Memorial Day, and why we must not only never forget, it isn't just the Indy 500 and barbecues and my mother's birthday and my kickoff of comedy. It's a lot happening this weekend, but it is a time for me always to reflect and remember, because it's tied together, that I get to have a voice. I get to be a comedian. I get to say things, however irreverent, or for lack of a better term, un-PC. I get to say things like screw cancel culture and the electric bike it rode in on, because I'm in a free country. And it stayed that way because people made enormous sacrifices for us. And this weekend is always a weekend of incredible joy, tempered and laced with incredible gratitude and reflection. And I hope that I've said something this evening that's brought back a memory. It's made you scratch your head. It's made you think about it. I have friends that'll call me on the phone and say, "All right, I have the Grievals. Maybe I've added to your lexicon. Maybe I've gotten you to see something from a different point of view." But more than anything, I want you to know that one of the things that I'm appreciative of, that my freedom and my ability to speak and do what matters to me and have a purpose, has brought me a relationship with you. And that, to me, is the thing that I'm most grateful for. When I look back on the sacrifices that people made, I get to have an amazing life, uncensored, free, and delightful because of what came before me. So I hope you enjoyed our little special edition Shorty Memorial Day show number 53. Next Saturday, I'm home. I'm not traveling. And until next Saturday night on this particular platform, because I'm still doing the 330, and tomorrow will be day 428. 428. That's crazy town right there. And I'm incredibly grateful that we've all stayed together. And it's not getting less. I said when it gets less, I'll evaluate doing it every day. But it's not getting less. It's actually picking up speed, and I'm grateful for that. So until tomorrow at 3:30 or next week or whenever you find me, love hard, forgive harder, and get as happy as you can, as fast as you can. Good night, guys.
Raindrops are falling on my head, and just like the guy's feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit. Those raindrops are falling on my head, and they keep falling. So I just did me some talking to the sun, and I said I didn't like the way he got things done. He's sleeping on the job. Those raindrops are falling on my head, and they keep falling. But there's one thing I know: the blues they seem to meet me won't defeat me. It won't be long till happiness steps up to greet me. Raindrops keep falling on my head, but that